Hello and welcome to Rotation Nation. So this lesson is going to walk you through some of what the book covers in lesson 6, chapter 14, translation and rotation in 3D. Schiffman goes into much greater detail than I do, and I will just point out that if you open up your examples, if you go to learning processing, he's got some examples here. You can see he's got a whole lot more than I'm going to be doing here. So feel free to check those out. This one, for example, just goes over the first item, which is rotating on the z-axis. By the way, if you're, just a little side note, if you're working on two monitors and your processing sketch opens in a second monitor, for some reason this won't work. So you need to drag your window right into the same window as your processing sketch, just on the same monitor. All right, but I'm just going to go on with my examples here, and the first one of these is lesson 5_1 simple rotation, and these are in the lesson 5 folder. So please download this and go over this with me. So if we take a look here, I've got a couple of floats at the top. I've called one pause for positive, and I called the other one neg for negative. I'm setting up my size so it's big enough so I can see what's going on. Now this is important, and this says P3D. This allows us to rotate things around the z-index, in other words, in 3D. So now there's a slight problem with Mac in that you'll see all this redness down here. It throws errors. However, it works, so don't worry too much about it. The only time it can cause problems is if you are trying to export your sketch into what is called an application. Shouldn't be a problem for us in here. It's just a real thorn in my side that they have not yet fixed that, but they didn't ask me. All right, so I've got some things here. Let me just start with what you're gonna see when you open this up. So down here, I have 3 different rotations. Now one is called rotate Z, one is called rotate Y, and one is called rotate X. So let's take a look at these before I even play my sketch, because this can be a little, mind-boggling at first in terms of how rotation works. So the first, actually, I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to get to the Z last. So the first of these is rotate Y, or excuse me, rotate X. So what happens here is that things will rotate along this axis, all right? So it'll do something like that, right? So it'll turn and turn and turn. Let me draw that a little better though, all right? Because it's not exactly, it actually goes this way. We'll see that in a minute. But it's rotating like this, like it's being, let's say this is a pole and this is a donut, and the donut hole is rotating around that pole. All right, so let's go next to Y. And I'll play these in a minute. Hopefully they will make more sense. In this example, our rotation happens around this way. All right, so this is the Y index. In this example, our donut hole is here and it's rotating around this way. Z is the most confusing of all of them, because what Z actually does is it's like it's sandwiched between two, this is the way I like to think of it, 2 rectangles, and they're holding it right in place, so it's just rotating in between those rectangles this way. Okay, so I don't think the Y made a lot of sense there, so let's just go over here and see what it does. And I've got some activities down here at the bottom. I want you to turn it on and off these values as well, so you can see what it does. So let me run this, bring it over to the correct window so it will work. So right now, I've got everything loading in at an X of 0. I'm just rotating a rectangle, by the way. And I've got it set at 0 and 0, so it's stuck up here in the corner. I don't like that. So what I've done is I've added another I've actually added a translate here, and what this is going to do is it's going to move it to the middle of my stage. So now it said translate, so that the 0 and 0 is now in the middle here. So the x of 0 and the y of 0. Now, isn't this beautiful? So this is why I love rotation. You can get these incredible, beautiful, fascinating animations very quickly. And one of the things you're going to do in your exercise for this one is you're going to make a video recording, a screen recording of at least one of these animations. All right, so I'm going to turn this off though, and let's see what happens. Let's just break this down. Let's just first see what happens if I'm just rotating the Z. So again, the Z, we mostly talked about X and Y this semester. So X is along the width, Y is along the height, but a Z is forward and back. And this is where it seems like this would be rotating towards us and away, but it's not. This is where those little, the sandwich I was trying to show you is like holding this right in one Z axis. I know that's confusing. It confused the crap out of me until I literally took pieces of paper and figured out what it was actually doing. But I think you'll see it in comparison with the others in a second. And isn't this beautiful though? All right, so I'm going to stop that. I'm going to turn my Z off. And I'm going to turn my Y on. Now I could have these, right now I've got these, this one's rotating negatively. So it's actually rotating from the right to the left. I just have one positive and one negative just to kind of, you know, play with those differences. And again, so on this one, we could pretend that, you know, there's a Y axis and everything is rotating around it this way. Okay, so that's Y. Let's turn that off. And let's just turn on the X. And there we go. All right. So the best way to learn what these rotations are doing is to come in. And by the way, you can rotate anything. Right now I'm just rotating a rectangle. By the way, let's throw something else in here. Let's say I'm going to rotate a circle. If I could spell. Let's see, I think it's X and Y. I'll keep the X and the Y the same, and I'm going to make it, let's make it smaller. And you'll see what happens is that they're now both rotating. So you can really build up some beautiful complexity. And if I wanted to, I can come in and I'm just going to say, let's turn all these back on. Okay. All right. So it's super easy to get hypnotized by these. So play around with these. We'll get on to some of the other ones. We're going to be playing with color and things like that, and transparency and all kinds of really fun things. But play around with this example until you kind of get a sense of what it's doing. Play with some of these values. Turn off and on the rotations like I was doing here. We can turn off and on the translate to see what that's doing. But play with it and have some fun, and then we'll move on to the next lesson, or excuse me, the next segment in this lesson, which is going to be making things bigger and smaller.